I'm sorry, say again? Yeah, I got rid of 14. I just forgot. And I wasn't really enjoying the questions anyways. So. Well, is there anything out there? Or no? Sure, sure.
About authenticity.
I'm sorry?
The first video about authenticity. I guess I was just wondering if it's possible to tell when someone is being authentic, or if it's only something that you feel as you yourself are being authentic. I think sometimes I can sense, like, I feel like people aren't being authentic and it's like a turn off and I don't like it, but maybe they are, and that's just my own perception.
I actually don't know what it means to be authentic. And I say that because there's so many layers to us. And we are influenced by so many different factors. And I don't really know if my voice is actually my voice or it's another's. I know that it's nice to feel unique, and it feels nice to assume that one is the owner of what one is and what one thinks and what one feels. There is a poet that we have in the Persian world. His name is Fariduddin Attar. He wrote this book called, it's Tazkiratul Awliya. It basically means the lives of Sufis or saints or philosophers in the Middle Eastern tradition. And his introduction to the collection of stories that he has about these giant thinkers is that it's something he says about himself, which is, I wanted to write something original, but I couldn't. So I asked myself how to best spend my time. And I came to the conclusion that since I can't come up with anything original, even though he did in previous works, maybe I should just consume myself with the lives of great thinkers. And maybe in that way I can be connected to something that's authentic, since I can't generate authenticity on my own. You know, authenticity, it's an interesting phenomenon because for the most part, no one really desired to be authentic in our human community. You were to follow the laws of your culture, the laws of your tradition, because you don't really want to become an outcast, because then you'll be forced into the desert and there is nothing out there for you. There are no narratives. You can't be psychologically nourished. And no one really desired to have like an original or authentic experience. You know, all you want to do is just go to the mosque or a temple, sit and read a book or pray, go to the campfire and listen to someone tell a story for you to be mesmerized, to be inspired. But this feeling that you need to be original, you need to be unique, you need to stand out, it didn't really exist for the longest time. The other aspect of it had to do with the fact that if I love you and if you love me and if we have a life together, you don't really have a need, and you like that life, you don't really have a need to go out there and start a fling. You know, add to it the fact that the culture kind of makes sure you don't cross certain lines. And the culture is set up in a way where you don't ask certain questions. Like you don't look at your husband and say, do I really love him? It doesn't exist. You know, what you are really looking for is a life that's solid, you know, and your skin is thick enough to kind of just wrestle with the difficulties of life as best as you can. Something I think happened to all of us, especially the Western world, around the 19th or so century. You know, if you consider what has happened to us in the past 200 years, we've been around for a few million years, human beings have. But the last 100 years have been extraordinary. The things we have created, invented. If you put together all the inventions of the past couple million years, it won't even come close to what human beings have done. I mean, not human beings as us, but those who have been innovative and creative in the tech world. The way we do architecture now, we do buildings now, the sort of stores we have now, it's amazing, it really, really is. But in the course of creating such vast cities, something happened to our tradition, something happened, you know, it's, something happens to you as a person of color, as an immigrant, where there is a culture that dominates you. Let's just say in America, the white culture dominates you. As a person of color, you feel filthy. You feel less than human. You have to prove yourself. You're devalued. You want to be white because it is a symbol of cleanliness. It's a symbol of being civilized. It's a symbol of purity. It's a just being a person of color is a demeaning place to be in life, you see. And it only happens when you're forced out of your own community. And I think for the longest time, human beings knew where they belong. If they're a Muslim or a Buddhist, if they're a man or a woman, if they're a black or white, whatever. And religion still had power over us. You know, you didn't really want to come out and say, I want to be unique. I want to be the next Steve Jobs. But as culturally, we kind of made changes to the social spheres and then the political spheres, and then those impacted the human psyche. And then the nature of advertisement began to change, and we slowly became hollowed from inside out. In other words, you look at your life, the things that used to give you meaning no longer do. And you're desperately walking around, you go on a hike to figure out what exactly it is that you want to do with your life, and there is nothing. You want to believe in something. You want to believe in a marriage. You want to believe in parents. You want to believe in yourself. You want to believe in religion. You want to believe in school, but there is nothing out there that you can latch onto. But there is this idea that's floating around that I want to be authentic. I want to be unique. I want to see my soul come out. I want to make sure that my job is an expression, an extension of my soul. And these are things that people never really desired. You know, and if you look at the human being as he or she stands today, I don't really know if there is anything that we are able to believe in. I mean, I'd like to get married, but I don't have a culture that supports that narrative. I want to fall in love, but I don't have a past that supports it. I want to be educated. I just don't know if it's for my pocket or for my mind or for my heart. I want to belong to a community. I just don't know if I really want to hang out with anyone. And if I was to hang out with people, I don't really know what sort of conversations I would want to have with them. I like to read a book. I just don't know what book I'm interested, you know. And there is this idea that's floating around these days that you should be unique, you know, you should be authentic. Your life should belong to you. And you look at, there's a layer of you that is, you know, you look yourself in the mirror, it's the only body you've known for the past like 25 years. Your physical reflection is you. It's a certain part of you. And that you can't escape. You know, and just in case I wake up in the morning and I look myself in the mirror and one side of my face is up, the other is down because I had a stroke and I wasn't aware of it. I am so connected to my physical body and my physical appearance that there's a good chance I'm going to call my boss and say, I don't want to come to school because it's going to take some time for me to adjust to this new physical form. And I don't want to come to class and have you guys look at me in a strange way. And of course, I know that most of you will be respectful enough to kind of just look at me the same way you've always looked at me the past 14, 15 weeks. There is that one layer. And I don't know how to get rid of that layer and say, you know what, I am not my physical body. And there is this authenticity to me that is not connected to my physical body. Then there is the emotional layer to me. You know, feelings come and go. They can come to class, I can make you feel bad, 10 minutes later, the whole thing is forgotten. I didn't really make much of an impression except that one, you know, that 5 minutes, that's it. Emotions are historical. I am 60, you're like 30 almost. You have 30 years of history inside you. And that history not only has joy, it also has sorrows. And whoever you are, whatever that comes out of your mouth, whatever poetry you write, whatever relationships you get into, whatever you define your friendships to be, they are an extension of that history. I don't know how you can remove that particular layer and say, I want to be authentic. Who are you without that history? I don't really know. You know? Because to some extent, authenticity means that, and I'm not talking about you and I getting together, you feel comfortable with me, I feel comfortable with you, where you begin to share your history with me and I begin to share my history with you. I mean, that's gossip. There is nothing wrong with that. It's a nice way to have a relationship where you trust me enough and I trust you enough, where we sit and we reveal oneself to another. And it's a great place to be, you know. It's like a therapy session between two friends who trust each other and who like each other and who love each other. And that's wonderful. It's not authentic, I don't think. But if you want to chalk it up to, well, most often I talk about issues that have no relevance to me, but they're just nice conversations to have, you know. But once in a while, I find a certain community of people where I can really just come out and be myself. Well, in that sense, what you are is, for the first time, you feel comfortable enough to come to my office and say, listen, I want to tell you something, you know. And it means that there is enough comfort, there is enough trust, and there's enough even passion or love where you say, this is where I stand, you know. Then there is this psychological layer to us. I mean, emotions have a history, and those emotions have to do with, like, you have an emotional history with me. Okay. There may come a point where you have a psychological narrative about all instructors, all teachers. They're all manipulative. They're all power hungry. They're all attention greedy. And it doesn't matter if you're at Laney or Stanford or Yale or Princeton, none of those things matter. Okay. Psychological narrative of who and what you are really is like one of the core roots, fundamental roots of what makes Ariana Ariana. It's like, my brother-in-law, who's married to my sister, and they have two beautiful kids. He was in the Iraq-Iran war, and he was in a bunker. His bunker mate, his roommate, told him, listen, today will be my last day. Tomorrow I will go back to the city and spend the rest of my life with my parents and my wife and my kids. Since tomorrow is going to be my last day, why don't you just go, take a break from the bunker life. Just go out there, have a good time, come back tomorrow. I'll give you a break. He says, fine. That very night, Iraq throws a bomb, that bunker gets destroyed, his friend dies. He never talks about it. I mean, being in the Iran-Iraq war was a horrible place to be. 1 million people died, both sides. It was 8 years. I mean, that's a traumatic experience. It's like your parents divorced at the age of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and it just lives like cancer inside you. And it's so powerful that it really destroys everything that you touch. It's like the triple bypass I had. I was talking to my brother this morning. There is this story about Abraham Maslow. He had a stroke, he recovered, he's on a walk, his wife is on the balcony looking at him, and he's been told that he should walk on a daily basis, and he's doing so. All of a sudden, he falls to the ground and dies. And so the idea that just a couple months ago, I had my triple bypass, and I need to go on a walk every day for at least 45 minutes. It's like imprinted in my brain that I am not as healthy as I think myself to be. That at any time life could be taken from me. Okay, so that's a traumatic experience that whatever I touch, wherever I go, and it's a conversation I had with my wife yesterday, which is, listen, I feel death very closely. It's there with me all the time. And because of that, my relationship to time is different. My relationship to age is different. My relationship to who I want to hang out with is different. How much time I want to spend with people is different. Everything has changed now. Okay? And so it doesn't matter if you take me to Hawaii or if you say, you know what, we're going to spend the next few weeks in Oakland. My approach to life is going to be the same because the trauma is never going to go away. Now, by trauma, I don't mean it has to be negative. It could be very educational if you know how to use it well. And so there is this layer to us that is profoundly psychological. And if by authenticity you mean all of a sudden getting to a place like tabula rasa, that the politics of life has been deleted from your soul, and the social forces of life have also been deleted from your soul, and your personal experiences have also been deleted from your soul. And you don't have to use a religious language to this. By authenticity, the way I think of it is, you go back to the Garden of Eden. Society has no longer any power over you. Politics has no power over you. Your past has no power over you. Your traumas have no power over you. Your passions about future have no power over you. The trauma of the past have no power over you. You're just like a blank slate. And now you say, I want to write my own life. I don't know how anyone can get rid of all these layers so they can rise up and say, I want to be the author of my own destiny. I think the best we can do is, you've read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice? If you haven't, the shortcut is watch the movie that came out, I don't know, in the 1990s. So we're talking about a class system. Okay, you have someone who's really wealthy, and you have someone, a family, not wealthy, not middle class, but maybe lower than middle. And so at the top of the food chain is Mr. Darcy. You know, he's handsome, he's rich, he sculpts, he writes, he thinks, he reads. People at the lower class, they have to just work from the moment they wake up to the time to go to sleep. But Mr. Darcy goes to this place with one of his friends, and he falls in love with this. He looks at this girl, and it's something we talked about in this class plenty of times. As he's walking to sit at this table where only the nobles sit, you know, his head turns to the right, and there is this girl. What's her name? Keira Knightley or something. And she is gorgeous. She's attractive, and he looks at her, and he kind of just gets fixated for only a few minutes. But he's high class, you know. He can't give himself away like that. And certainly, like the Indian caste system, you can't fall in love or be interested in someone who's lower than you. And so he kind of just puts himself back together and tries not to give her too much attention. She's also a little puzzled because he's given her a look, and she's also moved a little by who and what he is. There is like this explosion inside Mr. Darcy. Now, you can't get of the fact that you are a human being and magic happens without you wanting magic to happen. You're simply attracted. You know, you can walk away, you can drop the class, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. The attraction is there. But Mr. Darcy, for him to express his authentic feeling that has nothing to do with social class, that has nothing to do with wealth, that has nothing to do with being a man or a woman, that has nothing to do with your idea of what it means to be poor, what it means to be rich. What Darcy needs to do is to rebel against this idea that social class actually means something. How could someone have nothing and you, being a king, be attracted to someone who's so poor? How could you lower yourself like this? So he has to fight against the social conditioning, the class conditioning, the political conditioning, all of his own ridiculous assumptions. And at a certain point, he breaks the chains and he goes to this woman and says, "Will you dance with me?" I suppose that's authentic. That you have to overcome so many fears, so many assumptions. And she says yes. And I don't know if you guys know much about the life story of Nietzsche. Once you guys take like a real introduction to philosophy class somewhere, you'll have a much better instructor who will probably tell you the life stories of these giant thinkers. But Nietzsche hung out with this one young woman, her name was Matilda. On their second date, he looks at her and says, "Marry me." She says, "No." And then he begins to write all these nasty things about her. Time passes. And he runs into this other young woman. I think her name is Louise Salome, if I'm not mistaken. On their first date, he looks at her and says, "Will you marry me?" And she says, "No." You know, it's not like today where you go out for like years and then you say, "Will you marry me?" And the person says, "Of course not. You know, it's been fun, but I don't want to marry you." And I say this because Pride and Prejudice falls in the same time period where they touch hands as they're dancing, they gaze into each other. Their bodies are very, very closely situated. And they part ways. And this young woman has, a number of sisters. Anyways, this younger sister, older sister, goes to his friend's house. And she says, I want to go visit my sister who's sick. So she goes there. Once she opens the door, something very strange happens to Mr. Darcy. He has to again overcome his social class, his status. The moment she walks in, he stands up to greet her. And everybody's like puzzled, what are you doing? That's another authentic expression, that something about you is instinctual. It's intuitive. You don't know why, but you like someone. You don't know why, but that liking of someone forces you to stand, not so much to respect the person you love, but to respect the emotions that live inside you. And those emotions say, God damn it, stand up, you're nobody. In the presence of love, you're reduced to ash. Stand up. And then there comes a point where long story short, I don't want to talk about this for too long. Authenticity, being true to oneself. It's difficult to be true to oneself. There are really so many things to overcome. Those who spoke about authenticity, let me just say some nasty things about them, because I think they deserve it. Martin Heidegger, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Simone de Beauvoir. Frantz Fanon, people in privilege. It's like Donald Trump. All these politicians telling the rest of us, sacrifice for your country. I don't really mind sacrificing if I know people on the top are sacrificing as well. I was talking to my wife this morning as I was walking around the campus. It is such a fucking dirty campus. I mean, look at this fucking room. If the president or the chancellor send us an email saying, we want to clean this place up, but that means 5% cut from everybody's salary. Everybody. Those who make over the chancellor, the deans make over 200,000. The chancellor makes almost 500,000. Those who get paid over 150, they'll pay 15%. The rest of us puny people will pay 5%. I wouldn't mind doing it. But for someone who's making billions of dollars, telling the rest of us, you should, sacrifice a little. Jean-Paul Sartre has the privilege of sitting in a coffee shop for 5 hours writing a book, telling the rest of us how to live our lives. Friedrich Nietzsche becomes a professor at the age of 24. Jesus Christ, who's got no mouths to feed, tells the rest of us that we should pursue the kingdom of God. You know, the only, I think, person who has any right to talk about authenticity is Moses or Muhammad, who say, listen, life is tough. You don't need to go to the mountains and figure out who the hell you are. You are a reflection of your social environment. If you really want to know who you are, see if you can take care of your mom. See if you can take care of your dad. See if you can pay for your kid's sister's school. If you have that generosity inside you. Anyways, good luck. There is so much talk about railing against conformity. Conformity gives you guys jobs. When you go home, your parents are there. You know how to speak and communicate. You accept the alphabets and the words and the definitions. You greet people. You have friends. So, Carmen, yes. Carmen. Yeah. Martel, anything? It could be the bottom.
Ideal breakfast.
Ideal breakfast. I go to La Farine, it's a bakery on Fruitvale. Get 2 baguettes, rustic. Put them in the office. So when I get here in the morning at 4, peanut butter, some jelly or honey. In darkness, some piano in the background. Yeah, you should come by. 4. What? I'll make you good breakfast.
Like almond butter?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone from this side? Liam.
You talked on nostalgia.
I suppose it's a golden period, a golden age of every new relationship that lives in Hogwarts. It's this magical place. Lots of fantasies exist. Then eventually life gets in and destroys those fantasies. And then once in a while you sit back and you travel back in time by yourself in your own mind. And you'll get some feelings about it. And you want to bring them to life. But you're no longer the same, and the person you're with no longer the same, or maybe the environment is no longer the same. Once in a while, I sit with the kids and we go back and look at some of the pictures of when they were, tiny, not so contaminated. And it's really, really fun, the stupid things that they did and still do and will do for a long time. And to some extent, what it does is that if, for example, you were angry with your kid, once you see those pictures, the anger goes away. and you become a bit more refined, a bit more gentle, a bit more generous with your time and emotions. You lower your expectation and just really enjoy the moment. And I think we're all desperate to some extent, you know. So, but it's important to have them. Yeah.
What makes people give up on themselves?
You're a boxer, so I'll try to give you boxing language. Very cheap, superficial way, but so forgive me. How much do you weigh?
How should people see?
All right, so you can get in the ring with Manny Pacquiao, let's just say. You can maybe go a couple rounds with Manny. You know, Manny's about 150, 155 now, maybe. And you guys are almost the same. You're taller, you have a longer reach. And so you could kind of spar with him a little bit. And that wouldn't be bad at all. You can walk in the ring with a good amount of hope and fantasies. I think, however, it would be a mistake for you to walk into a ring with Mike Tyson or George Foreman or Muhammad Ali, first because they're about 180, 190. Second, because their punch carries a different weight because of their weight and, you know, their physical size. And so maybe after 30 seconds or 40 seconds, there's a good chance you'll give up. And you'll give up for a good reason. First, you give up simply because you weren't paying attention to who your opponent is. If you enter into life, I mean, look, let's say I like you. And let's say that I think that you and I can have a good friendship. And by friendship, I mean that as an immigrant, there are things I can give you. Okay. Just in case you say you want to drop out of school, just in case you say you want to like have a companion, just in case you say you want to help other people. Our friendship, hopefully, will result in you getting rid of those assumptions about you and just listen to me for a few years. I'm at least 40 years older than you are. You know, very much like most of the people in this room. I've worked graveyard, I've washed floors, I've washed dishes, I've been a maid, I've done a lot of awful things in life. Wonderful things, you know. So it's not like I haven't been to places where students have. Okay. Now you may enjoy this friendship. But when I come to realize you just don't listen, you don't do what I say, and you may think like I'm manipulating you, and I am, rest assured. We are all in the manipulative business. But if you let me manipulate you, in a couple of years you will have your own life, and it will be a good life. Okay? When I realize that you're just too much work, and you're not making any effort, I give up. That giving up is actually good for me because I can spend my time elsewhere doing other things. Imagine that you and I are in a relationship. You love me, I love you. I just happen to drink too much or maybe smoke too much. Okay. Now, you're not going to give up initially because you're going to have lots of fantasies and hopes that you and I are going to read the Bible together. You're going to take me to your parents' house. Hopefully, I'll rehab through that. Maybe you'll come to me to AA centers. But there is only so much capacity human beings have. I can only give you so much trash, okay, before you lose heart. And there comes a point where you say, Amir, I love you, but I've given up. I don't want to do this anymore. And it doesn't mean you don't like me. It doesn't mean you don't love me. It just means that you're just exhausted. One of the nice things about thinking or reflecting is that you kind of examine the situation so you don't overextend yourself. You don't exhaust yourself. When you realize that you're walking into a relationship, okay, that I'm going to create too much damage in your life, or I'm going to expect you to do too much effort. Once you know those things, you say, you know what? I don't want to do it. It's only when you don't understand the situation and you follow your own, so to speak, intuition, which we don't really have very much of, and it's not very clear. Okay? When you follow that, when you overextend yourself, when it goes beyond your capacity, if you want to hang out with a 40-year-old woman, she's going to demand money. She wants you to be solid. She wants you to be mature. You need to overcome being 20. And that's one of the problems when you hang out with people who understand a few things about life. You can't just be yourself. You have to be more. Your past becomes an obstacle. If that makes any sense. You're like me, a person of color, so you got to pay attention to things. Anna, Justin, nothing?
Have you ever been part of a protest before, and what was it?
Not here in Iran. When I was a kid, and like all kids, we're all dreamers, You fall in love, and you get into fights, and you steal things. You join. Iran was a huge thing in 1979. You were going to overthrow the entire government. It was a monarchy. And thousands of people on a daily basis would jump into the streets and scream. And police would come out, soldiers. They would open fire, and they would happily volunteer to be shot. And you would carry corpses to the cemetery, wash the bodies, bury them. One of the nice things about protests is that, your life is shit. It's small. My life as well. It's reduced to a stupid grade, stupid relationship, But all of a sudden you get consumed by a mass movement where the idea is about justice and fairness, and you get connected to this idea that has been around for millions of years, and it's wonderful because your life is no longer small. Your life is no longer about going to Costco and grabbing, a bag of milk. It's about justice, and it's not just about you and your buddies. It's about like 400 million people in America. So one of the nice things about mass movements, which is to some extent, a mask that all of us enjoy wearing, because it does connect you to ideas that are just so much bigger than who and what you are as an individual, as a person. Your past goes away, your future goes away. And it's like you sitting next to Jesus Christ. That's what mass movements do for you. The only problem with mass movements is that they get you drunk, but they don't do anything to enhance your understanding. To understand anything, you need to make a lot of sacrifices, and you can't do it on a massive level. You have to do it on an individual level. If everybody in this class is going to walk to my office and your time is free, well, you're going to walk to the office with them, and we're all going to sit, and we're all going to eat, right? And we're going to get into conversations. But then one day you come to this class and there is no one here except you. And I said, well, Justin, let's go to the office. You say, no, I'm busy. And you say that because, well, you don't really understand me, you don't really understand the class, you don't really understand the food the bread we broke together, you don't really understand the environment of the office, the sort of conversation we had. But regardless, you were consumed by a moment of inspiration. And that leaves for you a memory. I met Abi when she was, 18. And she has done so well for herself. She has this very unique giggle to her when she is free, and she sounds so funny in a nice way. I'm saying, but she's very restrained, for the most part. Maybe you could say she's like a Freudian repressed. She keeps certain things very, very like deep down. Once in a while, the freedom comes and she becomes authentic. She giggles. Okay. Now, going back to Liam's question as well, I don't know what else she experienced in my class at the age of 18. This is like almost 35 years ago. It inspired her to kind of invite David and I to her house. She cooked for us, She hung out with us for a number of months, and then she disappeared. It's because she didn't really understand the friendship. She assumed that we can simply be her friends. But you can't be friends with us on a casual basis. We expect things from you. If I invite you to my house, culturally, I am obligated to feed you. It's not even up to me. I don't give a shit if you're full. And you, as my guest, you're obligated to eat whatever the fuck I have made for you. Inspired moment. But that doesn't mean that you understand this moment of inspiration. So that when you invite Cynthia to your house, you just say, yes, what can I do for you? Well, you don't really know how to greet people the right way. You haven't learned how to say thank you after you've been, to a person's house. Those things are absent from you. And for you to understand those particular attributes, you need to sit, you need to observe, you need to study, you need to feel bad, you need to understand. And that's not what mass revolutions do. Mass revolution is like a wave. You create a wave to destroy a structure in hopes of creating a different structure that helps a lot of people. But it doesn't give birth to understanding. It's like the hippies. Their experimentation with drugs, with sex, with free love, all you have is a mess. And a bunch of people who don't really understand the politics of life. And they have no teeth because they did a lot of coke. So anyone else? Anna.
What are the significance of dreams?
They're not very significant. Unless, let me tell you a story. There are maybe a few elements to dreams that you should consider. First, there is the person who dreams. Then there is the message in the dream. Third, whether or not the dreamer have the capacity to study the messages. Fourth, whether the dreamer has the capacity to apply with the messages. In other words, if, for example, you have a dream that you should pick up the phone and call me, pick up the phone and call me when you wake up. Okay. But for that to happen, you have to overcome a lot of like your own barriers that you've created for yourself. Now, my father, when he was, I think a few years after he was married, he had this dream. There is this saint in the Muslim tradition. His name is Imam Reza. He's like Saint Paul, let's just say. So Saint Paul appears to my father and says, "Do you know who I am?" And my father in the dream says, "Of course, you're Imam Reza. Beautiful man." He says, "Well, yes, you have summoned me. What can I do for you?" Now, when you approach a sage or a philosopher king in the language of Plato, what the questions you want to ask is, can you tell me about the nature of the cave, about the shadows, about the path that one takes to find liberation? And once one sees the light, how is it going to make one feel? And how long does it take for one to become adjusted to the brightness? And what does one do once it's normalized? Does one go back to society? Okay. And so that's what the sort of questions you ask. So my father looks at this philosopher and says, "I want to buy my wife a house. And I want to make sure my kids have good education. What should I do?" And this man who has fought, he fought his entire life for justice and for all those things. He looks at my father in the dream. He shakes his head disappointedly, laughs at my father, and says, "Don't worry," and then disappears. And so what you have is this great dream. It's like Jesus Christ coming to you, And instead of asking Jesus, "Well, how do I become Christed?" You say, "I have an issue with my girlfriend or boyfriend. How do I deal with it?" He says, "Really? I left my parents at the age of 12, went to the desert for all these years to try to figure out the meaning of life, and I come back and ask me about a ridiculous relationship, Now, you can have dreams about your past. It doesn't mean you will know what to do with them. You can have, because remember, dreams have its own language, and you need to be educated in the dream world to understand the alphabets. And you also need to have a culture. Like the American culture has its own unique outlook on drugs. So much so that now when you drive on the highway, there are these billboards. A pound of cocaine for 50 cents. All you got to do is call 1-900-COKE, right? In the Native American culture, or certain parts of the Mexican culture, what you have is secret societies when it comes to drugs. Okay? These are called teacher plants. They are there to teach you a few things. Be cautious. Make sure you approach them respectfully. That's not part of the American culture. Okay? So what you have is a good amount of narrative, psychological and cultural narratives missing. America right now, for the most part, it doesn't have the culture for dreams. It doesn't have the proper narratives. It has some cheesy and ridiculous and superficial ways of looking at dreams, which is not bad. At least it's something you can kind of just, feed off of. When you go to cultures that have been around for a long, long time, you have a certain category of dreams that are caused. It's your interaction with everyday life. And everyday life it's imposing. It creates all sorts of things on you. Okay? And then you have to find a way to deal with it. Now, sometimes you can't deal with it. It's like, have you ever had a wet dream? Well, you have a wet dream. Okay? Now, part of it has to do with psychic and biological tensions that live inside you. You're at a certain place in life. Maybe you watch too much Angelina Jolie or Beyonce or whatever. And there is something about us that are just attracted to things that are beautiful out there. And one of the ways that your body expresses its desire for beauty, its desires for intimacy, its desire for intimacy and unity is sex. Okay? Because you don't have Angelina Jolie in your life, and there is so much pressure psychically and biologically, that's what happens. You have a dream. And the main components of the dream happen to be sexual. And then your body releases the tension. Now, it'd be foolish of you to get up and say, I think the dream means I should call Angelina Jolie, or drop out of school and go to Los Angeles, figure out where she lives. So there are some times you have dreams about your work, where you have a dream where you're sitting in the bathroom, and you're looking down the toilet bowl, and there are these brown things in the toilet bowl, and you put your hand in there and you put them in your mouth. And now it doesn't mean that you should wake up and, eat shit. It means that you have a job you don't like. You have customers you don't like. You go to work being angry, you get out being more angry. And every time you have a customer, you say thank you at the end of the day. How could you be eating shit and saying thank you at the same time? It just makes no sense. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that you can quit your job and stop eating shit. It just means the dream is telling you, your life is shit, period. So you have a dream that falls in the category of caused. There is another set of dreams that have to do with our future selves. In other words, you think yourself to be like a huge basketball player, or in your case, a musician. So you have a dream where you see yourself next to Prince, playing the guitar and singing. There are these other kinds of dreams where, if I was to self-indulge for a moment, forgive me, when I was working with Hussein, one of the things that he had us do, three of us, really, if he had any dreams, we should write them down, and then we would share those dreams, when we would see him in gatherings, and then he would tell us what those dreams meant. Now, there was something about Hussein that was not about the tables and chairs of life. He wanted us to be more reflective, more creative, more authentic. And so the 10 years of being around him, you have like 1,000 dreams. He is the centerpiece. And it's not Hussein himself, it's what he represented. Okay? So there are certain dreams, and it's something that Aristotle would call like friendship of nobility. That there are certain people who don't want your body. They may use your body, but it's not really for your body. They may use your life, but not really for life. They want you to get to a place where they are, the things that they are interested in. Okay, so they embody certain elements that other people don't really have. And so they become the very centerpiece of 99% of your dreams. But it's going to take you about, and those dreams have profoundly inspiring elements to it. Okay. One of the things that you need to understand about those particular types of dreams and those particular types of friendships is that you will only understand the dreams after 10, 15, 20 years. Okay. There are these other dreams that I don't know why they happen, and it's kind of like the story of the American prophet, Edgar Cayce. Cayce is just a regular chap, and all of a sudden he has this beautiful, magical, religious, philosophical, spiritual dreams, and he's actually able to embody them in physical life. One of the things about the Islamic culture is that in the Sufi circles, it's argued that the only person who's able to interpret dreams the right way is this young kid named Joseph, whose father is Jacob. And he's been imprisoned by the Pharaoh. That itself is a whole world of symbolism that I won't get into. But it's good to pay attention to dreams. So. William. A second. Abi?
What is the symbol?
A few years ago, we had, I won't tell you the symbolism just yet. I'll just tell you a story and then we'll go home. Maybe on Thursday. We had a friend, and it's a story I've shared, I think, in this class. They lost a son. Right? Now, you're a parent, I'm a parent. I'm a man, I'm a bit more detached. You're a mother, something grew inside you, so your relationship to your children are very different. So at the age of 17, this kid had a heart attack and died. Okay. Now, before that, they lived a relatively happy life. And by happy, I don't mean like it was a cheap life. They were immigrants. He was a taxi driver, graveyard, had 3, 4, 5 jobs. They lived in a governmental housing and all those things. And slowly, of course, they prospered. This woman was always very happy, very joyous. You would never see her frowning. She was always filled with laughter. Then when her son passed away, it's as if something about her just died. And so I remember at the funeral, her husband was leaning against a tree, folded arms, no expression. The mother was just wailing and screaming and beating her head and all those things. Jacob represents someone who has authenticity to them. But life all of a sudden comes in, as it does for all of us. And little by little you realize, well, you're no longer belly laughing, you're laughing from here. Then time passes, you realize you're not even laughing from here, you're just laughing from here. Then you realize you're not even laughing from here, you just have that's it. And then after a while, your face won't even move, you just kind of nod your head a little. Okay. And then there comes a point where you sit and you say, I really, really miss laughing. And you just don't know where to go to find your laughter back. And you put yourself in a variety of different environments, but nothing works. So what you have in the world of Jacob is a guy who loved and a guy who lost. But it wasn't a casual losing of a thing. It was like this core and fundamental part of him. And so he cried and cried and cried and cried until he became blind. Now, being blind itself is symbolic. There are lots of things out there that's vying for your attention. That desires to occupy you, entertain you, occupy some space inside you. But nothing penetrates Jacob. He no longer cares. He's like Gilgamesh. He says, why should I go back to this city? City has nothing to offer me. I'm going to grow my hair long. I'm going to grow a long beard. And I'm going to walk into the forest. I want to find Utanapishtim, he who has found life, with capital letters, life. And so Joseph represents beauty, wisdom, a Socrates, the philosopher king that lives inside you, the kingdom of God, the sort of thing that all of us in this class are looking for. But we approach it in all the wrong ways, William.
Back to like what we were talking about the other day with like, altruism, whether it really exists or not. Could be it. Dive too deep into
How old are you? What's your major? Confused? That's great.
just afraid to commit.
It's okay. You're not afraid to commit. That's not the point. Unless you've had a traumatic past. That's a different story. You don't commit because there is nothing valuable out there for you that captures your interest.
Like there's a lot of things I can get behind, but
Look, when you go to a buffet, America is a buffet. You can eat a lot of different things. You just end up with diarrhea. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Here's an altruistic act. Not so much on you, but on me. Why don't you start coming to my office?
what? Quite on that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be down.
You'd be down on what? You'd be down, huh? Yeah, Tower. Yeah. About 5 a.m. Ah. It reminds me of a saying, I am ready to learn, but you have to teach in a way that I like. Well, that's no way to teach anyone anything. You can't demand how I should teach you. But here's the thing. I am willing to be altruistic in the sense that I am willing to give you some of my time and some of my energy. But for that to happen, you have to make some sacrifices. And I will manipulate you, exploit you, so you can like me. Maybe even love me. And once I become the master and you become my slave, I will tell you that you need to have the desires that live inside me. You're confused now. Well, major in philosophy, major in humanities. I'll help you. When I give you my time, it means I'm taking time away from my own writing, my own relaxing, my own family. I'm going to give it to you. But if I see that you don't really appreciate it, I will walk away. I have no problem with that. But if you follow through, if you're down with this, in about 5, 6, 7 years' time, your life will be changed for the better. But you can't make a promise right now because you don't really know what that means. By the time you get to that promise, you have to make sacrifices. It means that when I come to the campus, I need to see you outside the tower building at 5 in the morning.
You know about the selfish theory?
I don't know.
So like there's like that all choose their own preservation and you can survive by doing that. It's like say there's like two brothers and one of them is like sexually impotent, can't reproduce, right? And the other one can. It's like according to this theory, it would be the brother that can't reproduce is more likely to sacrifice himself for the brother that can than the other way around. Because that gene inside him like wants to propagate more. It's like like the gene prioritizing its own survival and not in a specific person, but like in the that's kind of an interesting concept, but I think that for humanity, it can go beyond just like physical, beyond like the physical genes. I think that people want to immortalize their self in more aspects. Like, say, I don't. The reason I say that is because it's like one kind of not like one kind of explanation for wanting to give your time to teach someone that's not as like, altruistic is that
I've stopped listening to you. And it's not about you. My mind doesn't work the way yours do. My mind is not interested in the things that you're interested in, so it just shuts off. Yeah, sorry. To preserve my own sanity, I had to act altruistically. To preserve myself, I had to shut you down. It's a selfish gene. Carmen, Jason, is it time to go? All right, have a nice day.